10th of October, World Mental Health Day. And here at St. Paul's, as Sharanya already mentioned, we have been organizing different guest talks and competitions to create awareness among ourselves about the need to have a sound mind, and also to spread that awareness among others of the importance of this sound mind. And one of the prerequisites to have a sound mind is to establish healthy relationships, social relationships. I think that is a point, that is a topic that we are going to discuss today. And our guest speaker is Father Divya Paul. My duty this morning is to welcome everyone to this guest talk. I definitely start with the resource person for the day, Father Dr. Divya Paul, who is the director of Center for Diversity in Counseling and Psychotherapy, Bangalore. I should also say, I was telling just a few minutes before, Father Divya Paul also was my professor at the St. Peter's Pontifical Institute 2003, when Father returned from his, after completing his studies in the States, and very young, energetic, enthusiastic person who instilled in us, a lot of values, especially in the field of pastoral counseling. And Father, I should say they have been very helpful, and we still remember those important points, and we try to practice them in our lives. The same enthusiasm I can still see in you, very young and energetic. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It's great having you with us this morning, Father Divya Paul. And on behalf of the management, the staff and students, I extend you a very warm and hearty welcome, Father Divya Paul. I also like to welcome the members of the management, the Vice Principal, Father Sajid, and Father Arugya Swami, the administrator, and also Father Joseph T.C., Professor in the Department of Psychology. Welcome, Fathers. I'd like to also welcome all the HODs of the department and all the faculty members and my very dear students. Welcome everyone to this guest talk this morning. I also like to place on record my appreciation and acknowledgement to the Department of Humanities, HOD, and the entire staff for your thoughtfulness, and also for organizing this Mental Health Week, various events that you have been organizing. A sincere appreciation for organizing these events. And once again, I extend a very warm welcome to everyone and have a very enriching session. And thank you.
Thank you, Father Thomas, for that warm welcome to all of us. I now request Sister Joyce, the head of the Department of Humanities, St. Paul's College, to introduce us to the speaker and tell us a little more about who he is and how he is one of the most relevant people to talk about dealing with mental health issues in today's milieu. Sister Joyce?
Thank you, Saranya. Seriously, I have a very long profile of Father Divya Paul, and it is like too much. So I'm just going to pick few things and the prominent ones, for example. So we have with us today a person who is a rare combination of intelligence. I think that it penetrates into several aspects of human life, social, cognitive, emotional, and it goes on, and especially the mind and heart. A person who has touched the lives of thousands of youth, I can say, through his positive affirmation, his vision. He did his PhD in LaSalle University in US. A lot of additional training like marriage and family counseling, communication process model, life coaching, logotherapy, Gestalt therapy for groups and individuals, cognitive behavioral therapy for addictions counseling, emotions focused therapy, a lot of professional experience as well. He's been the head of the Department of Psychology and Counseling, Montfort College. He's the director of Youth, Yuva Chetana Indian Catholic Youth Movement, Bangalore. He's been the secretary, Archdiocesan Youth Commission, Young Students Movement and Young Christian Students Movement, director of Center for Diversity in Counseling and Psychotherapy, Bangalore. He's also been the visiting professor of pastoral psychology and counseling at St. Peter's Pontifical Seminary, professor of counseling psychology in Global School of Counseling, Bangalore, member and managing in the managing committee, Medico Pastoral Association, Bangalore, chairperson, program therapy committee, member of the Governing Council, Montfort College, member of PG Board of Exam, Bangalore University, so on and so forth. It is a long list. He's also been the consultant and clinical supervisor, one-to-one help.net corporate counseling services, external supervisor for professional development, Bosch India, resource person for Family Welfare Center. He's conducted also a lot of workshops and programs, especially with the youth. So towards identity and wholeness in adolescence, understanding today's teenager, building dynamic leaders for tomorrow, marriage and family counseling, communication process model, couples work, different mindsets, different perspectives, power and courage of personal control, nurturing positive mindsets, formation for formators and superiors, spirituality today, its meaning, psychosexual integration and celibacy, teacher-pupil relationship for teachers, spiritual direction, coping with the loss of a significant other. Thank you so much, Father. I mean, your profile is unbelievable. You've done a lot, especially with the youth. And today we are very happy to have you in our midst, especially the youth of today are eagerly waiting to see what you're going to talk about. And they've also, I am sure they have a lot of questions to ask, and hope this is going to be a fruitful session to everyone. Welcome, Father. Saranya?
Thank you, Sister Joyce.
Good morning to you all.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Sister. Without further ado, I'll just let Father Divyapal to take over. Father, over to you.
Thank you, Saranya. Good morning to you all. Dear Father Principal, members of the faculty, and my dear students, I am delighted to be with you. In fact, this is the first time I am associated with St. Paul's College. I did know your former principal, Father Prithvi, quite well, and had visited the place a long time back when it was in its planning stages. And so this is absolutely great for me to interact with all of you. And also, this is a first of sorts because this is the first time that I'm actually addressing a very large number of participants in the virtual world. So I'm glad to do it, really. And wish you all a very happy Mental Health Day. I hope you don't take a mental day off. This is a special day for many, many reasons. The theme for the World Mental Health Day, observed every 10th of October, with the overall objective of raising awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilizing efforts to support mental health, is this. The theme is mental health for all. Greater investment, greater access, everyone, everywhere. That's the theme. Mental health for all, greater investment, greater access, everyone, everywhere. And I think what your college is doing today is in the right direction. It's a great investment that they are making in all of our lives. I'm only going to mirror to all of you young people what I have learned over the many, many years that I've been associated with young people like you across the country, and very particularly in Bangalore and Karnataka. For the past 25 and more years, I've been associated with young people, and I have learned enormously from my experiences with them. And today I'm going to share with you with anecdotes and drawing from research and, lessons that psychology gives us. The theme that was given to me, mental health and relationships. Now, this year's World Mental Health Day on 10th October comes at a time when our daily lives have changed considerably and dramatically as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't even have to talk about it. The past months have brought us many, many challenges. I mean, think about those people caught in poverty or in fragile humanitarian settings, the migrants. For the vast number of these people with extremely limited protection from COVID-19, and for people, particularly those with mental health conditions, and many experiencing great social isolation than ever before, this is a really, really hard time. And then to think of it, for all those people in grief, suffering the loss of a loved one, and oftentimes without even an opportunity to say goodbye. I live in a parish with about 2,000 families that I minister to. We've had so many COVID deaths. One stands out, a young father and a young husband, 43 years old, with 3 children, 2, just like all of you, young, in college, one in first year and the other in the final year, and a daughter in her 10th standard. They never got to see their dad after he went to the hospital, never had an opportunity for a goodbye, never saw his body even lie in a casket. In fact, his body was cremated. The ashes were buried by BBMP with his son standing a good 100 meters away. Now, for this family that was close-knit, they came to worship together every Sunday. There was a lot of times I interacted with them. The children sang in our choir. They were part of the youth group. And I knew how much their dad meant to them and how much their own, love for each other, was significant. And most importantly, their friends. None of their friends could go home to offer their condolences or to be with them during these trying moments. And in fact, I chose to go there for the 40th day ceremony and spend some time with the bereaving wife and children and his parents. It was a heart-wrenching moment with many, many questions. Particularly during this time, what they missed most was the comforting presence of people that cared about them and loved them, their relatives and friends, who would have otherwise, if not for COVID, been there to offer them, words of comfort and soothing presence. None of that happened. Now, these are the challenges that all of us are facing in recent times. Having said that, relationships in the 21st century, thanks or curse to the technological advancement and of that little smartphone that all of us hold in our hands, the forgotten foundation of mental health and well-being and relationships are now sprouting. And we are beginning to study and understand how relationships, which has always been one of the most important aspects of our lives, has somehow been forgotten. And today, physical connections, relationships one-on-one or in a social gathering have all taken a hike. And today we are left to fend for ourselves with the prolonged lockdown that was imposed on our country, and then the fear of being infected by the virus. Yet we can often forget that these connections with human beings, which are crucial to our well-being, for our physical, mental health, psychological, and spiritual well-being, is something that all of us must stop to ponder and at the same time put in that effort, which we call an investment into our well-being, and see what we can do about it. To start off, I want to present to you certain studies that have underscored the importance of relationships. Studies have indicated, without any hesitation or doubt, that people who are more socially connected to family and friends or their community are happier, physically healthier, and live longer with fewer mental health problems than people who are less well connected. I repeat again, people who are more socially connected are healthier, whether it's physically, mentally, psychologically, or spiritually, live longer, and have fewer mental health and physical health problems than people who are less well connected. I draw from my experience working with youth. There were a lot of times when we would have youth programs or youth training in particular, where I would encounter youngsters just like you, your age group, who would be loners, who would be walking away from the group with a phone in their hand, texting or looking at it, oblivious to the fact that there are others, their own peers, having a great time, chatting up a storm or singing a song or dancing or teasing one another and having the time of their lives. As much as I would love to be in the company of these party mongers, I always sought out these loners who were walking away from the group. And I would always reach out to them and I would engage in a conversation of sorts, drawing out from them as to what was happening. And it would often be that they were friendless. In many cases, they did not know how to make friends and had some kind of a past experience that had traumatized them, where they had lost trust in people and had preferred to be alone than to be with others and be hurt repeatedly. Working with them was a challenge, but it was also a fulfilling work or ministry, like they would call for me, because introducing them or reintroducing them to their circle of friends, giving them a few pointers and tips as to how to make and maintain friends and build a social network was something that I love to do. And I'm led to believe that these things matter. Now, as a society and as individuals, we must, all of us, we must urgently press in building and maintaining good relations and tackling the barriers to forming them. We live today in a divided country. I don't even have to talk about it, and I don't want to get political. The events that are happening north, south, east, west points to a greater divide where humanity is pitted one against another on a variety of categories. Can you imagine what the next generation of Indians are going to live with everyone gunning for each other? What a scene that would be. It's about time that we start investing and building good relationships, casting away all barriers of caste, creed, and color, and coming together. Fail so is equivalent, I believe, to turning a blind eye to the impact of smoking and obesity on our health and well-being. But we are quite aware of what smoking or obesity can do to young people. We tell them, hey, come on, quit smoking. It's not good for you. You don't want to die an early death. Or we say, come on, man, hit the gym, jog, go for a walk. Come on, build up yourself. Now, why are we not telling people, come on, it's fun to be in relationships. Let's get together, socialize, build relationships, have fun, and together we are going to make it big. The Mental Health Foundation defines relationships as the way in which two or more people are connected, or the state of being connected. So relationship is about the way in which two or more people are connected, or the state of being connected one with another. Now, relationships could include the intimate relationships we have with our respective partners, those we form with our parents, our siblings, our grandparents, our extended family, and then those that we form socially with our friends in college or elsewhere, with work colleagues, with teachers, with healthcare professionals, and the community at large. Now, extensive evidence shows that having a good quality relationship can help us all live longer and happier lives with fewer mental health problems, and most importantly, finding some level of joy and contentment. Now, that's what all of us live for. We all say we have one life to live. Come on, let's make it happy. Now, happiness is a byproduct, really, if we want to believe psychology and research, of good relationships. And if we do have good, close, positive relationships, psychology again tells us that it can give us a purpose and a sense of belonging, a purpose to our life, and a sense of belonging with the community at large, with the world at large. Loneliness and isolation remain the key predictors for poor psychological and physical health. Now, psychologists all over the world are reporting an increase in clients requiring one-on-one therapy and clinical treatment from psychiatrists because they have suffered enormously during this period of the COVID-19 lockdown. They have suffered extensively because of loneliness and isolation. Having a lack of good relationships and long-term feelings of loneliness have been shown by a range of studies across the board to be associated with the higher rates of mortality. In September, we observed Suicide Prevention Day. All over the world, people talked about a spurt in the number of suicides world over. And even in our country, we've been talking about the number of high-profile suicides that have hit the headlines. It's not simply about higher rates of mortality, particularly suicide, but it's also resulting in lots of poor physical health outcomes and generally a lower life satisfaction. Now, these are things that we must take care of and we must be concerned about. I did a little bit of research and I looked at some of the studies that have been presented in various conferences in the past year and particularly in the last 6 months. A review of about 148 studies concluded that the influence of social relationships on the risk of death are comparable with well-established risk factors for mortality, such as smoking and alcohol consumption, and exceed the influence of other risk factors, such as physical inactivity and obesity. And physicians and health professionals, educators, and the media must take social relationships as seriously as the other risk factors that affect mortality. All of us must really. You see, we can ask for greater investment from the government and the powers that be. But the only kind of investment that really works is the investment that you and I make in relationships, building, fostering, and maintaining relationships. Having said all of that, I have to insist and highlight this point. It is not simply having relationships, it is the quality of our relationship that really and ultimately matter. In seeking to combat loneliness and isolation, we might end up making relationships or friendships that may not actually do us good. We need to be aware that poor quality relationships can be toxic and worse for our mental health than being alone. Again, research shows that people in unhealthy or negative relationships have significantly worse outcomes than those who are isolated or have no relationships whatsoever. Almost 86%, 86.7%, according to studies, of people report that they had someone to rely on in times of stress, whether it's family member or a spouse or a friend. But we are also becoming a society that's feeling lonelier than we have ever felt before. Now, this has been reflected in the changing nature of our society. Today, for everyone that's on social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or WhatsApp or LinkedIn or whatever it be, we all thrive on the fact that people are giving us a thumbs up. Like someone once said on Facebook, don't forget, most of those thumbs up you get are from the toilet. We are people who seek approval for a whole lot of things. We are looking to connect, in the virtual world and the online world, and ignoring really the people that are around us where we could have meaningful interactions. Now, because of all the technology that all of us are blessed with today, how we interact and form relationships has changed considerably over the past decade. The evolving family structure, development and reliance on online technologies, and today for those that are working longer hours, and changes in how we define community, because community today has got multiple meanings. There is an online community, people that you don't even have any idea about, you've never met physically, and people whose profile you might or might not have read, that we connect with, and how we can, these people may never be the same as before. I remember years ago, my grandmother, God rest her soul, she lived in a village, and once she hit 85, my uncle wanted to bring her to the town, to the city where he lived. She refused and she fought it off. So my uncle enlisted my support, and I was her favorite grandson, and I was the first grandson for her. And she often held me in high regard, not just because I was a priest, but also because of the fact that I was very close to her. So I went to the village and spent a few days with her, with my mom and my sister. And I ended up talking to her and laying down before her every reason why she should move in with my uncle, because there were better medical facilities. She was incapable of taking care of herself, and she needed help desperately, and taking care of the fields and the plants and the trees and the cattle and the poultry was not important anymore. She listened to me patiently, and at the end of the day, she said, "Did you see what I was doing last night?" I said, "What?" And she said, "Did you watch what I did?" I said, "When?" She said, "All evening yesterday." I said, "Well, you cooked for a little while, and then I saw you sitting and chatting up with, the villagers." She said, "Exactly. That's what I need," she says. And she said, "If you take me away from here, without all these people, I'm going to die. These are the ones that keep me alive. I sit there, I chat with them for hours on end. We talk about anything and absolutely nothing, but we have a great time. And this is what I need. I don't need anything else. I don't need a doctor. I don't need to live, in a big house. I don't need the city. I don't need all the luxuries that your uncle talks about. All I need are these people. These people keep me alive." Well, she rested her case there, but my uncle did insist that she move in with him. A few months later, he kind of forcefully took her to be with him because he was concerned about her failing health. She had fallen a few times and he didn't want her to end up invalid in bed. She didn't live long. She died. The reason, she got lonely. She had nobody to talk to. When my uncle and aunt and my cousins left for work, she was all alone. She didn't know what to do. She was not to watching television like every. She had nobody to talk. Walk the street up and down, come back, lie down, and sleep for hours on hours, and stay up all night because she slept all day long. And then death beckoned her. Now, to recognize the importance of good relationships and to define and develop and maintain these strong social interactions and connections are integral to all of our well-being and the well-being of our nation. You are young, all of you. You have a long life to live. Don't fall a prey to the divisive tactics of the powers that be. You need to build relationships, irrespective of what caste someone belongs to. At the end of the day, you and I end up in that 6 feet depth of soil. Ask those people who went into the and are lucky enough to get back out. I spoke to a gentleman who almost gave up. He came back and I called him up, and talking to him, I asked him, what were your experiences in the ICU? I heard a chuckle on the other side of the phone, and he said, I thought I was gone. And I said, that must have been an awful feeling. He said, yes, it was very, very scary. And I didn't want to go, but I knew I didn't have a say. I had to sign off. And I thought about all the things that I had left undone. But most importantly, what really, really bothered me was that I had not had a good relationship, particularly with my daughter-in-law. And then because of this, with my son and my grandchildren. And I was desperate to connect with them, but things didn't seem to happen. But lucky for me, he says, God has given me a chance. And he tells me, Father Paul, I would give up anything to go back and to relive all those moments when I was a jerk and make amends and build relationships with my son and his wife and his 2 lovely children. He said, I've learned the biggest lesson of all. COVID taught me nothing really matters but relationships. I'm a happier man today for what it did to me because I'm able to relate to all of them. In fact, I call them up every single day, and they are here to visit me and spend time with me. We sit and laugh and we have such a good time. But Father Paul, he says, physically, I'm exhausted. I'm breathless all the time. All I want to do is sleep or lie down. I have no appetite. I have no energy to do anything. But the moment I hear the phone ring, I jump up. The moment I hear the doorbell ring and I know my son or my daughter-in-law or my grandkids are coming over, man, life changes dramatically. He says, I'm beginning to live, to have many more days with the people I love. There was a study by Harvard University in 1938. I didn't get it wrong. 1938. Harvard University began a study wherein they followed 724 participants and part of the study on human development in history, a record of sorts. This study was developed to determine what makes us happy. The study explored every part of who we are, from physical and psychological traits to social life and IQ, to learn how we can all flourish in this world. Findings from this study were published in a 2012 book titled Triumphs of Experience. Triumphs of Experience. If you ever get a chance, pick one up. And a PDF of that book is available online as well. This book, Triumphs of Experience, shows the key results of this 70-year-long research study, scientific research study. It shows that what really makes us happy is not enormous wealth or living in a beach right in front of us, or a yacht parked in the back of our villas, but true happiness and a whole lot of other things come from our relationships. Triumphs of Experience tells us that happiness and health are not a result of wealth, of fame, or working hard, which all of us do all the time and want so desperately, but they come from our relationships. So the happiest men in this study of 724 participants were those that had beautiful, significant, meaningful, lasting relationships. So what are we waiting for? Isn't that all of us want, to be happy? Now, exploring relationships across the life course, we come to terms with understanding that what really makes people happy in today's world is not wealth, though every one of us would love to be a millionaire. It's not the cars or the bikes we drive or ride, though everyone would want a Mercedes Benz or a Porsche or a whatever. But what really makes us happy are relationships. And so relationships do matter. So it's about time we invested in relationships. As much as we would invest for a good retirement, we would want to invest today and now in building good relationships. Now, it is often said that children and young people, during the course of their lives as children and adolescents, learn how to engage with others from their parents, their families, their guardians. Most children and young people mimic the behavior and emotions of those around them. And this early socialization shapes how they understand and model relationships and behavior throughout their life. Now, the attachment that the child has with its parent or significant other or guardian is a central predictor for mental health and well-being, and also for a relationship satisfaction in adult life. Now, there are times when children and young people do not have very positive relationships with families. We have what we call study every until COVID-19 happened and we went under lockdown. We would get about 350 to 400 children every Sunday who would come for Bible classes. It used to be a whole lot of fun. There would be a lot of singing and dancing. They would learn prayers. They would learn about the Bible. There were a lot of worksheets, coloring, arts and crafts and competitions galore. And children absolutely loved it, except for a few who were not interested in it. But most of them came back on their own because of the fun that they had. There would always be children that I would notice in this big group who were hostile to one another, aggressive, and lots of times violent. I, because of the nature of my training, would always seek them out, reach out to them and empathize with them, give them a hug and start talking to them, and slowly uncover what's happening in their lives. I can tell you without the slightest hesitation that most of these children who were aggressive and violent and did not know how to relate with their peers came from very troubled families. Alcoholic, substance abuse, domestic violence were part of their everyday living. Now, this is something that psychology tells us we must pay attention to. While parents and families and caregivers are central to our well-being during adolescence, peers and friends become more significant as children grow into adolescence and young adulthood. And as young people become more independent, just like all of you, you start to build your own social networks. As a result, you do also have the negative toxic relationships sprout up, negative experiences in relationships as lack of trust and bullying or social isolation can become more relevant. And these could also have a serious impact on young people's mental health. Schools and teacher-student relationship and positive support from organizations like youth clubs or the NCC or any other clubs that you may have in college or elsewhere can act to help in this. I'm talking about all of this because these are the investments that we need to make to help young people build meaningful relationships. While family harmony itself may be more predictive of a child's well-being than the family structure itself, higher rates of mental health problems such as depression or anxiety have always been associated with loneliness, isolation, and social rejection during adolescence. I repeat, higher rates of mental health problems such as depression and anxiety have been associated with loneliness, isolation, and social rejection during adolescence. I have a word of advice. Not that I love to give advice, but I do on and off, and I think it's apt and needed. You young people must reach out to one another because there's nothing better and bigger and nobler that you can do than to reach out to your peers and friends who may be experiencing depression and anxiety, those that isolate themselves from the group, those that you would call loners, or those that we tag as weird. These are people just like all of us, except that they've not had a great life as a child like you and I probably did. It won't hurt us. In fact, it will only enhance our happiness when we reach out to these, our friends, with an offer of love, acceptance, empathy, understanding, small qualities that build up our character as well. How do we go about and make sense of all of that I have talked to you so far? Many people in today's world continue to have an active role within society well into their later years or their retirement, and get to a stage in life where they have all the time and have no clue what to do. I'm going to share an experience with you. One of my own people in the church called me up in the second month of the lockdown and confessed to me that he was feeling extremely low. He was separated from his wife and his only daughter. They were not on talking terms. And he voiced his concerns, saying, I'm scared. I've been locked in my house for the last couple of months. I have been getting a decent salary, thank God for that, he said. But I have been contemplating death by suicide. And I don't know why, but I thought I should talk to you. So I engaged in a conversation with him. We talked for more than an hour. We talked about different things. We talked about his faith in God. We talked about all his struggles, all his life. about his broken relationships, particularly the relationship with his wife and his daughter, how he had made so many efforts, but it had all come to naught. And now here he was, not knowing what lie ahead for him, particularly in the context of COVID-19. And he asked me, how are you spending your time? So I just told him, like, nothing much really. I said, but, we've been busy in church, reaching out to the people that have lost their jobs, and particularly the migrant workers. We've been trying to organize, food packets for them for lunch and for dinner from the Atria Foundation. And then then I told him, we have been buying provisions and making bags of provisions or ration and giving out to families that are in need. So that's what I've been doing. So I've been busy. I've not had much time to be alone. And I thought to myself, hey, I told him, you have all the time in the world. Why don't you come by and help out? Wear a mask and wear a glove if you have to. But you can come, be with us. We're a small team of people here doing these kind of things, and you can do it. And he said, does it mean I have to be in physical contact with people? I said, yes, but you don't have to, because we have volunteers who take all the precautions and go out and give these bags of provisions to people and their families, outside, but you don't have to do that. So he said, okay, I'll come by half-heartedly. And the next day I called him up and said, we're going to start by 11 in the morning. You're welcome to join us. On the dot, he was there. He stayed with us the entire day, didn't talk to anyone, didn't engage in a conversation, went about and packing the provisions in plastic bags and putting them all together in a sack. And after the end of about 3 hours of work, it was about 2 o'clock, and everyone wanted to go for lunch. I invited him if he wanted to come up and have lunch with me. And I told him mine is a very simple lunch. I don't have a cook, and this is what I have. And he said, well, don't bother. I'll go back home. And I said, what are you going to eat? And he said, well, I'll go and whip up something for myself. I said, come on over. Let's share what we have. So he did come after a little hesitation. He sat down. We didn't just, how do you feel? His feelings. I said, what kind of mixed feelings? He said, I've taken things for granted, he said. And here I am packing basic rice, dal, sugar, oil, atta, and soji for poor people. And I'm looking at this and saying, if I got this sack of provisions, I won't be happy, because I like my meal cooked right. I like vegetables. I like meat. I like to have an occasional drink. I love the fine things of life. And this is what these poor people are dependent on. What kind of food would they have for lunch or for dinner? What about their children? It's making me sad, he said. And then he said, but it felt good that I was part of this project of helping someone in need. He said, I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to help as much as it takes. Few days later, he comes to do the packing and everything else. And then he tells me, hey, Father Paul, I want to contribute. I want to also be part of this project in a significant way. Can I buy up provisions so we can do that? I said, absolutely. This is because of the good-heartedness of many people that we are able to do this. And I said, do you want to go pick it up? He said, yes. I said, you're not scared about physical contact? No, not really. I said, wow, that's nice. And then he said, you know what? I've also decided to go and deliver these packages and the packets of food in the afternoon and evening to those people. I said, wonderful. To cut a whole long story short, he continued to do that, and he still continues to do it now that he has gotten back to full-time work. And if you look at him today, he is such a different man. You can hear him make jokes. He's built a social network with all these men and young people that have come to help at different times. The youngsters love him to death. It's always uncle, uncle, uncle for this and for that. And anytime he comes over and he knows there are going to be young people and others helping to do these kind of things, he always brings a bag of goodies And in fact, the youngsters wait for him to come. And the first thing they ask is, have you invited him to come and help as well? Because they know they're going to get some goodies from this generous soul. I've not heard him talk about death. In fact, he's got a bounce in his walk, a twinkle in his eye for quite some time now. I'm hoping that this is a start of many wonderful things to come. It's not just that he came out to help. It's most importantly, if you missed the point, that he made meaningful connections with people with an altruistic heart. He connected with these youngsters who risked their lives by going into the slums and into those colonies, giving food every day, afternoon and night. And looking at these young people, he was drawn to them, endeared by their great big heart. And today, he's made so many friends. And at any given time, he could pick up and call one, or there are so many calling him and checking on him and inviting him to do this and that. His life seems full enough for the moment. I think I'm running short of time. So let me put it all together. Many of us, because of all that has happened in the past few months because of this COVID-19, have been using social media or online networking sites, often as a way of feeling connected with our friends and to increase our sense of belonging. Despite the increased use of online communication, almost half of internet users across the world reported that the internet had not increased their contact with friends or family who had moved away. While online communities can connect us, they can also be damaging and blur the line of who our friends are really. They can expose people to unhealthy communication, including trolling. We've all come to experience that, haven't we? It's important, therefore, that as a society, as a community, we evolve to become skilled in developing and sustaining healthy online relationships. We've got to know about those Zoom cocktail meets or Zoom lunches or Zoom picnics. And now it is important for us that we start building communities and real-time, good, meaningful relationships. Now, while online and mobile technologies can provide all of us a means of connecting, and it could also increase our sense of belonging, and it could, I'm saying, have positive impact on our relationships. Research suggests that this cannot replace our offline relationships. It is the neurochemical response that occurs during a face-to-face interaction that really contributes to our well-being. It's important that we meet one with another, at least the ones within our close circle of family and friends. Now, I'm going to conclude this bit with some clarifications. While our relationships impact our mental health, it is important for all of us to remember that our mental health can impact how we connect with others and how we develop relationships, vice versa. Okay? Now, mental health problems such as depression, I talked about, and anxiety can influence whether someone feels able to interact and connect with others. Now, this means that developing relationships and socializing in traditional ways can be challenging for some people, for some of our friends. Part of someone's journey, recovery journey, may be to develop confidence in social settings and to build healthy relationships. Now, for those of you that are social animals and party animals, this is a God-given opportunity to you to help these that are depressed, or these that are loners, or these that are anxious about social settings or social gatherings, and bring them in to benefit from the vast merits of good, meaningful, and healthy relationships. So it is important for us to recognize the challenges that someone with a mental health problem can encounter, and to do our best by offering the right kind of support. Investing in relationships is time consuming. It's time for all of us to commit to go that extra mile to build relationships. Now, the relationships that we have, and the relationships that we have formed, and the relationships that we will form are all there for us. So we can, as we grow older, get to understand the significance of relationships, because as we live our everyday busy lives with work and commitments, we may forget that relationships are important. We need to see a change of thinking, a sea change in thinking. Instinctively, we may recognize that relationships are important, but for many of us, our approach to building and maintaining relationships is passive. We are not actively engaged in it. It may be something that we subconsciously or without deliberate effort want. And we often overlook that it requires an investment, a serious investment of time to build and maintain good relationships. Now, doing that would certainly help us. The Mental Health Foundation, particularly on this day, the World Mental Health Day, believes that we need urgently a greater focus on the quality of our relationships. We need to understand how fundamental relationships are to our health and well-being. And we can only flourish as individuals and communities with them. Without them, we cannot. We need to come to terms with that. So 5 things that you can do, 5 small suggestions. 1, give time. Time is important for any relationship. Put time aside to connect with friends and family. Put your cell phones away. Connect with them one-on-one, one in a group. Second, be present. It can be very tempting to check your phone for that update or for that message. Facebook messages or WhatsApp messages or even work emails when you're with family and friends. Let it be there for a while. Try to be present in the moment and be there for your loved ones. Switch off your phones if it's possible. The third that I would recommend, listen actively. Listen actively to what the others are saying in a non-judgmental way, and concentrate on what is being said, on their needs, and what is being expressed in that present moment. When I say actively listen, it does not mean you silently nod your head. Engage in a conversation where you ask open-ended questions, and you are energetic, and you are interested in what is being communicated to you. Explore more ideas, explore more stories. Let the story flow. Facilitate that. That's active listening. The 4th point I would like to make is be listened to. Just as much as you would want to listen to everyone, you need to be listened to as well. So share your feelings honestly and allow yourself to be listened and supported. And when you do need help, look for people whom you can trust. And in the worst case scenario, reach out for help from professionals who can offer you an empathic, non-judgmental listening. Last but not the least, recognize unhealthy relationships. Being around positive people can make you happy. However, our well-being can be negatively impacted by harmful relationships. People that are negative, people that are often cribbing about a whole lot of things. these kind of things leave us unhappy. Recognizing this can help us move forward and find solutions to all of our life's issues. And on this World Mental Health Day, I wish you all not just good mental health, but good relationships, positive relationships, meaningful relationships. And may this bring you happiness untold and a lot of fulfillment in life. May it give each and every one of you a purpose and a meaning to your young, beautiful, and glorious lives. God bless you all.
Thank you, Father Divyapal. It was indeed, I should say, something that is not just relevant, but also something that is practical. It's an everyday behavioral change, everyday tips that you have given us. And we have our students reading to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Allow me to read them out to you so you can respond, Father.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the questions that the students have asked is, many times people tend to lose connection with families if there is a marriage out of community, and this tends to affect their children. How do we handle relationships like that, or lack of relationships like that?
Like I said at one point, there are a lot of things that break relationships and barriers, you know, before we want to connect with people or relate to people. It's up to us to see how we can overcome challenges. One of the things that I've often told my clients or my students is this: if there is a problem, remember you created the problem, and so the solution is in your hands. Whatever be the problem that is man-made can certainly be solved because we have the resources to do that. What it would take for us is empathy, to understand what's going on in the life of that person who walked away from us, or who broke away from us, or who chose something that he or she believed was the best for her life, but may not have been the best for us or for our families. Now, how do we go about resolving that? By giving an attentive listening to what the other person's perspective is, and to be open to listening and to see where we could meet mid-ground. And after we have done that, it would certainly take a level of humility on our part, to forgive for offenses against us, maybe, or for the hurt it has caused us. And somewhere along the line, a gracious heart would enable us to connect with the other. And I believe it's possible. It's not that it's possible. A lot of times when these kind of things happen, it's our ego and our pride that stands in the way of reconnecting and mending those broken relationships. Give humility a chance and lose out on ego. I'm positive that would certainly help.
And the next question is, there are a lot of friends and relatives of ours who are troubled by circumstances within the family, and most of them cannot talk about it to their family members as suggested. So no matter how much you talk them out of it, they end up in the same situation. How do we help these people?
Every one of us have demons to fight. A lot of families have their own demons to fight, and they do not want to air their dirty laundry for everyone to see. Having said all of that, how do we deal with people who have issues and problems within their own family and have no one that they can really talk it out, particularly within the context of their own family? Well, there's only so much we can do. But what we need to do is understand them, just like I answered the previous question. We need to understand that they have their own battles that don't have to mess it up for them even further. Allow them to come to terms with their own concerns, their own problems, their own issues. And when asked, we can help. How can we help? We may just jump in to offer them a whole lot of solutions from our own perspective and understanding, or we may offer them all the advice that's uncalled for. I think it's our silent presence with an understanding ear to listen and offering them our unconditional support, however messed up the situation may be. I think that's key to helping them mend. What I'm actually trying to tell you is don't get involved in the problem, don't get messed up in it, but offer them a therapeutic space where your presence is healing, where you don't take sides, where you don't talk about the real problems, but you are there to listen and understand and offer them support, offer them a shoulder to cry, reach out and hold them, dry their tears. That's all we can do. And that is
Father, the next question is adolescents tend to need a lot of privacy, and sometimes this privacy makes them drift away from their parents. How can we deal with this situation?
boundaries, draw the line as to what is entirely private. As much as I respect privacy of teenagers and adolescents, I also believe that there's a great investment, a positive investment that your parents can make. Confiding in your parents is the safest bet, because I don't think anyone has a bigger stake in your life than your parents. Confiding in them of some of your life secrets, I'm not saying all of your life secrets, don't tell this to your parents, but confiding in them what is absolutely required and necessary is not a bad deal, because they will stand by you through the thick and thin of life. Need that.
Thank you for that, Father.
As teenagers, we may think we can do everything and anything. Not really. We want to believe a whole lot in our own selves and in our abilities, but there are limitations to our age, to our expertise, to our intelligence, to our capabilities. Our parents have a wealth of knowledge. Trust me, all said and done, they care about you tremendously more than anyone else in the world. So if you have good parents who care about you and love you, and sometimes are a little pokey in your personal affairs, know that they have the greatest desire for your well-being. Nothing but that. Dialogue with them. I'm sure they'll understand. When you live a secret life, it's not that they are angry with you because you have a hidden secret life. It's because they are scared that you might lose out somewhere. And that care sometimes they just don't know how to express. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Sit down and dialogue. And will allow you to live an abundant and wonderful life.
Thank you for that, Father. I think it's a very timely reminder to our young people. The next question is quite a genuine one. She says, you said everyone wants social connectivity, but there are some people who genuinely like to be alone. It's not because of any past trauma, not because of any bad experience, but they just like to be still and completely alone most of the time. How would you respond to that?
You have to distinguish between two things: being lonely and enjoying solitude. Both of it is about being alone by yourself. Being lonely is when you have a deep desire to connect with people and you don't have people to connect with, or the ability to make those connections. But solitude is the deep desire for aloneness, where you enjoy being with yourself to do the kind of things that you absolutely want to do all by yourself. And there have been great people in the world who have absolutely relished their alone times in solitude. And it is in solitude that they have found life's greatest benefits. That's where you must distinguish. What is it about being lonely and what is it about being in a solitude? People that love solitude choose it of their own. Only may chose on their own because of past circumstances and events, or because they have been forced into that corner because of non-acceptance by the community at large. So you have to make those distinctions. There are people who love to be alone and read a book, write poetry, and do a whole lot of things like music and dance and whatever, and enjoy it, and absolutely relish and look forward to those times. And then there are people who are alone and dread those moments. And then there are people who can be in large groups in the midst of a raging party and still be alone and lonely. Those are people that we must look out for.
Talking about identifying the difference, Father, the next question is about the student who's asking, how do we identify which is a healthy relationship and which is a toxic one?
Well, I can give you a whole lot of characteristics of a healthy relationship and also the traits of an unhealthy or a toxic relationship. Now, to make it very, very simple, what is healthy for you need not necessarily be healthy for someone else. You are the prime decider of what is good for you. If it promotes your well-being, if it promotes your quest for being who you truly are, if this relationship facilitates your independence and dynamism, those are healthy traits of a positive, meaningful relationship. When you feel yourself confined, losing your liberties, and always walking on pins and needles, that's a toxic relationship. Now, you can decide what's good for you and what's not. If a relationship holds you hostage, if there are do's and don'ts and demands placed on you, that relationship is a no-gooder. But if a relationship promotes your well-being to the point where you are assisted and journeyed with to the discovery of becoming what you are and who you wish to be, that's a positive and a meaningful relationship. So what works for your well-being? Good. And if you fret and fume about your relationship and are always worried about what next and what's going to happen, then be wary of that relationship.
Another question is related, Father, on how narcissism is something that is coming up time and again in the discussion of toxic relationships. How does one deal with narcissism, and how does one identify one's own narcissistic tendencies, if so?
In simple layman terms, if a person is too obsessed about oneself, you don't really belong with that person, because every relationship is a two-way street. There's a lot of give and take. It need not necessarily be a 50-50. Sometimes it could be a 80-20, and sometimes it could be even a 90-10. But what is important in every relationship is that you are valued. When you are not valued and you are sidetracked, then you are enmeshed with a person who is narcissistic, because what that person seeks is his own well-being and glorification. That's not going to work. So if I were to put it down in simple terms, if a person is obsessed with himself or herself at the expense of you, the partner in the relationship, walk out, because that's not going to change. And if you're asking me, how can I change that person? Well, if you are a professional, I would give you a few tips in therapy, but it's going to be a long drawn battle. Do you have the time for it? I would suggest, if you did have the time, work on yourself, build yourself up. Don't waste it on someone who's too obsessed with oneself.
Thank you, Father. Another question, which is a very pertinent one, is how do we handle the effect of divorce? Because we get affected by our parents' divorce.
Okay, now that's a huge question. Divorce impacts children in profound ways. It can be traumatic for a whole lot of people. All of a sudden, you see that the parents that you looked up to are not what they are, and one or the other is choosing to walk out on you and leave you without a father or a mother. It can be very, very traumatic. what do you do with it? As much as you would want to talk and draw comfort from caring individuals, I would recommend, if it has affected you dramatically, to seek professional help, because you need someone who can listen to your deepest concerns and fears and confusions and help you process that professionally. It's important for us, it's imperative that we seek help, particularly when we go through these very, very, very challenging and difficult times, particularly the young people who suffer divorce in their families. I have to also tell you that a divorce in the family, a divorce of your parents, does not necessarily define your life. It does not define your life. You're not your parents' decision to stay or to part ways. You can make sense out of it and move on and move ahead in life. All you need is to seek the right kind of help that's available around. So I would say, talk it over. Talk it over, trust, guidance, and if possible, with a professional helper.
Thank you for that one, Father. The last two questions. One is talking to a professional. There is somebody who's raised a question saying there are people who suffer, for instance, somebody she knows is suffering from postpartum depression, but is unwilling to see a professional. And then there are others who are having issues with their work-life balance, probably a parent, probably a relative, but is not willing to take professional help. So could you comment on these two things? One is how to convince somebody to take professional help. Two, how to make someone aware that they should have work-life balance. With that, we close the Q&A session.
Sure. See, there's been a lot of stigma attached to seeking professional help, particularly psychotherapy or psychological counseling. People resist that for many reasons, because they believe that's something that they can't deal with, and it would be something that they would face about. Said that to encourage people to seek professional help, as much as we try, sometimes there are people who just won't do it. I have had people that have said, like, I'd rather talk to you than talk to a psychiatrist or talk to a professional counselor. There have been a lot of times when young people have told me, like, my mom needs psychological help, but she won't seek it. Or my dad has this problem, but he won't seek help. What do I do? Now, for the people that have asked those questions, you are interested in their welfare. If you can find a professional who can help you to help them, basically, who can help you in therapy to be of therapeutic help to those that you believe need help, you could actually help. I'm talking personally. This is my personal take. There are people who can debate about it. I have worked with a lot of people using them as secondary therapists. They will report back to me on some of the interventions and some of, the formulated questions that I've given for reflection for these people that need help. And these people go back and in their interactions with them, get them to think, process what's going on in their minds and in their lives, and give them certain suggestions. These come from me, the professional therapist, but they do it without the tag of professional therapy. It has worked. I wouldn't say it's 100% effective, because sometimes, the person who is in need of help can catch you off guard, but nonetheless, there's something better than nothing, at least for the time when they don't want to seek the kind of professional help that's available for various reasons. We can help. So for those of you that ask these questions, and if you do have people, why don't you talk to somebody who's a professional and ask for help for this friend or this family member, and you play the therapist's role, but keep constantly in touch with the therapist. And it's important. Like even for seasoned counselors and psychotherapists, they have to be, under supervision. They need to have a senior counselor or a therapist or a clinician who works with them concurrently when they are working with clients, because you need many more perspectives to, give the best kind of help that you can give to people in need. So I would recommend that if you can't really convince them of the need for counseling or for therapy, you could play the secondary therapist. Good luck with that.
Thank you, Father. Finally, the last question was on work-life balance. I think this,
Yes.
this lockdown has sort of reminded all of us that, this work-life balance is of utmost importance, but somehow the lines are blurring. Because we are at home, we're working all the time. We see this with parents, we see this with our own selves, teachers, for instance, or, heads of institutions, for instance. They are constantly working. So how do we get this work-life balance struck?
The corporate world has taken over our homes, really. With people working from home, they've turned homes, bedrooms, kitchens, living rooms into office spaces where any household activity is seen as disturbance and abnormal. I have two nephews of mine, both working from home, and I have two grand nephews who run riot at home. So you can imagine the misery and the plight, not of my nephews, but of my grandnephews. Now, these two fellows, the nephews, have taken over their space and want them to behave. Now, whose side am I on? Certainly my grandnephews. It's their home, for God's sake. Now, all said and done, today, with people working from home and working odd hours and long hours, you rightly said, the distinction between work and home is completely blurred. This is where I recommend self-discipline for anyone that's working from home. Log in when you have to, log out at the right time. Be assertive. Don't be aggressive, but be assertive. You're working from home, and people at home need the space back for their everyday lives. They have been generous and kind and allowed you to work from home. No doubt you put food on their table and you are the earning member, but still, they're making a bigger sacrifice too, a sacrifice of their life and their family, convenience, and for the corporates, bigger gain. So draw some lessons on self-discipline. Log in and log out at the right times and take enough and more breaks. Today, working long hours and eating at odd times, we are gaining weight and growing pot bellies, really. It's time we said I need to draw up a schedule or a timetable and live my life by it so I can live a healthy life. Today, with this isolation and lockdown, we can't take long walks. Gyms are still closed, while some are still opening up now. They've begun to. And parks are a no-no. So we have to find some ways wherein we can find ways to exercise and find the kind of relaxation and refreshment that the mind seeks. So it's important for us to compartmentalize work and our social and family lives. So my advice to you is drop a schedule. Have enough and ample time for work without any sort of disturbance. So it's clear to everyone at home, I'm working these hours, please leave me alone and cause me the minimum disturbance that you possibly can. And once this is done, I'm all yours to play, to have fun, and do whatever you think we should all do together. So that, I think, could help us to some level in this time.
Thank you, Father Divya Paul. I think I'm going to... Thank you, Father Divya Paul. The year was 2006, and there was this 20-year-old girl who is still trying to find her footing. And, she walks into this church, which looks a little looming and large and strange for her because she was entering into this new world with a lot of problems. And then there was this young man sitting near the grotto, listening to music and sort of talking to himself. She sits next to him and then he starts talking. He almost feels like a long lost friend. And a few hours later, there are 10 people coming and calling him father, father, and she gets a start, This girl was trying to find her footing at that point in time. And this man who refused to reveal his, huge stature was Father Divya Paul. And the girl you're talking about was me. I was this young girl who walked into that church that day for some reason. And he was sitting right there, and just talking to him made such a big difference, and to understand that he was a friend of young people in itself was such a great way to take things forward, and somehow inspired me to, urge people to talk more, urge people to seek help, especially with people who are elderly. And I think it is that feeling of warmth, that feeling of great comfort that a lot of us felt when he was talking today. Thank you, Father Divya Paul, for sharing your views with us. For someone as pro-interaction as you, I know how much of a handicap it must have been to not have people asking you questions directly, to not laugh with you and cheer with you when you're talking, to someone who's so agile, and he's one person who uses the entire stage when he speaks. And for him to stay here in one place and talk to us this day with no less effect, nevertheless, that really made a difference. Thank you, Father Divya Paul, for your time and for your deep insights, for the practical tips that you have given our students and us as teachers. We're eternally grateful for this day. My thanks are also in order to the management, Father Thomas, our principal, Sister Joyce, the head of the Department Humanities, all the lecturers, all the teachers, teaching and non-teaching faculty who've been there time and again and ensured that this transition between online and offline has been as smooth as it can be. My thanks are also in order to my wonderful students who are so full of enthusiasm all the time and ever ready to take on newer challenges, so enthusiastically asking those questions. Some of those questions were so mature, it sounded like it was coming from a 30-year-old.
Absolutely.
So for me, it was a wonderful revelation. Those chats, I've literally saved that chat and kept to sort of reassure myself, saying, yeah, these were, 17, 18-year-olds who were asking these questions. So thank you, dear students, for that participation as well. Once again, thank you, Father Divya Paul, for your time.
Yes, thank you very much, all of you. Like you rightly said, Saranya, I really miss not seeing those lovely faces and interacting with them, physically. I would love to be there and meet with all of them, and it felt odd, that I had to keep looking at myself on my screen as I was making this talk, and so I was looking away and not wanting to look at my face. But it was good being with all of you, and like I said in the very beginning, I'm grateful to you for having me at St. Paul's, and I want to especially thank the principal, the staff, and particularly Sister Joyce for inviting me. Joyce and me from the same parish. We were kids at St. John the Evangelist Church, and I knew the family very, very well, and they were such a religious bunch of people. No wonder two of them became nuns, and God bless them. And all the very best to all of you, and God bless you, and may you have a beautiful year. And I'm sure good things are waiting to happen to all of those who believe. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, Father. On that note, can I ask all our students to come on video? So Father Divya Paul knows that you all were there. A, B, I also get some pictures with all of you on screen. Okay, there we are. Okay, there. Lovely. Okay, let's go. We are in gallery view now. Thank you. And all of us, can we give a big broad smile for the camera that neither me nor you can see?
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you all. Lovely to see you.
Just one more picture. Just about 30 seconds, Father. I have to save what I have clicked.
Sure.
And there we go. Can we have all of you all smile again? Yes, thank you. Lovely, 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 lovely. And one last shot and then we are done for the day. Okay. Yes, fantastic. Thanks, guys. Thank you, all of you, for being so enthusiastic and participating so well. Thanks, guys. Over to Father Thomas and Dr. Babu. Students, you all can log out now and you all can continue with your regular schedule until 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We will be sharing the feedback form with you in just a little while. All of you will need to fill the feedback form to ensure that your attendance is marked, as well as your teachers know what you felt about the program. All right. Thank you, all of you students. You all can log out now. You all can leave. Thank you. Thank you, sister. Thank you, Father Devpal.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.